All right, we're live, man. The first ever AllStar MMA live show. Um, what can I say, man? It's a long time overdue. We were planning to do this show a while back, and things happen. But we're here. We're now. I have Dan. Dan is the special guest fighter slash analyst. Dan, first off, how do you feel about being this analyst role? Putting this hat on. Because you've done this in the past, like little bits and pieces, right?
I have extremely like mixed emotions about uh like an analyst spot or I don't know, like talking about the sport in general, just because I know like what actually gets like attention in this game and what I am passionate about. And the two like coming together give me very mixed emotions because I don't like talking about the people. I don't like the clickbait headlines. That's just a part of it. I
Mhm.
click on the clickbait headlines, so I'm not saying that I'm above anyone else. Like I click on the clickbait headlines. Conor McGregor's on this and doing this and that as much as anybody else, just because it like appeals to human instinct. But it like muddles what I'm truly passionate about, which is the sport. I remember like when I first started um in the sport, which was like very far between. You would have to read like a article. It would just be like GSP does an interview and there's an article, and you would take like a sentence out of that article where he says, "Oh, I do this training and that training," and then you would mimic it or you would copy it. Now there's like unprecedented access to fighters on their social media, and there's just like they all have YouTube channels, and it's like countless amounts of information. And rather than asking like technical breakdowns, they're just like, oh, pick win or lose, and why do you hate that guy, or well, this guy said this about you. So it's like very mixed because I don't want to just be like another like people were saying, oh, once you finish fighting, you could just get into commentary or have a YouTube channel or something like that. I would be interested in doing it if it was like if people were legit interested in like technical breakdowns, I would
Mhm.
be into it. But they're not. Like it's like the funniest thing to me as well because like a legit technical breakdown of like a fight or a fighter takes forever. And because I did it, like there was a time when I did it, like super long technical
Yeah.
breakdowns. I was just like, man, like study this fight, spend 5 hours watching one fight, watch it 10 times, like just watch, watch, watch. Oh, okay, this guy does this. Do a video, like, okay, Aldo circles this way, like Chad Mendes is gonna look for this countdown, like 2 likes. You're gonna get 2 likes out of that one. And then you do another video and you're just like, check this knockout out. Well, boom! Like I picked this guy because his hair's red. 1,000 likes. It's not even close. Like you're the one that draws the most attention, or it's just like human nature, just like fast paced. Just give it. I don't care about the technique. I don't care about. Tell me who's gonna win, and give me one sentence as to why they're gonna win. So it's a big internal struggle between me
Well,
and myself.
with this show, we're gonna try to mix that up. I mean, we're gonna get into the technical side and and mix it up with the other stuff as well. Make it entertaining as possible. The people that are in the chat, keep bringing the comments, the questions for Dan, for about the fights, what's next for the main event fighters, all of that good stuff. And we're gonna discuss all of that. Let's jump into it right away, Dan. Strickland versus Hermansson. We just saw them go 25 minutes. Initial thoughts on Strickland, just his skill set, his stance. I mean, let's get to the technical side, right? Like just how he fights, man. It's unique, right?
It is very unique. Like he has that like low lead hand, um, rather than carrying the jab or measuring his distance with his lead hand, which a lot of fighters do, hold like a long lead hand, paw and jab, which Jack Hermansson was fighting like that. Like he'll just have that low lead hand, sharp eyes, like to have that kind of style where your lead hand is like in here and that tight and that low. You have to have a good gauge of distance, which he obviously does have because he spends, like as he says, all he does is spar. Like he spends his time sparring a majority of the time, so he's getting those reflexes and getting those kind of reactions. Sharp jab and just working off that jab, like everything comes off of that jab, and that was dominant. That was a very dominant display from that fight, just controlling the entire tempo. He controlled the fight with his jab. I know there was a split decision. I'm not going to get like too much into that. Like I'm not super offended by that because Strickland, although I feel like it was dominant and he was controlling it, he didn't have to come out of first or second gear. He was in like first or second gear the entire fight, controlling it. Jack Hermansson had a higher work rate. Like that guy was in the fight. He was pushing the takedowns. He was throwing more kicks. Like he was definitely working harder. Like Jack Hermansson was in fourth or fifth gear for a majority of that fight. Whereas Sean was just getting away with coasting. So I can understand it because the work rate was there. There's like one guy was obviously working harder to try and get the win, but it just wasn't enough. He was being outclassed and controlled by the jab.
Do you think if Hermansson would have won this fight, right, on the judges' score, would that be justified in your eyes? Would that be justified?
Oh, then it would have been a bit much for me, but I could definitely understand it. I could definitely just because Jack Hermansson, like the amount of effort like he was putting into it. And it's funny when you're sitting there, like it's so different. Just because while I was in Vegas, I spent so much time actually in the apex, like watching Contender Series, like watching these fights compared with watching on the TV. And it is so different being cage side as opposed to watching something on the television, because you can definitely like see the strike, but it's different when you're in the apex and you're cage side and you can hear the strikes land. Like you might on TV, you're like, why did that guy, even the Figueiredo Moreno one, that is a big one for me, because a lot of people are like, man, Moreno was in that fight and this and that. But obviously the judges there, that like they can hear it. Like it's like that. It's like when a fist like bounces off a guy's head, it's loud. It's not it's not a quiet thing whatsoever. So when you are sitting cage side and you can hear that leg kick, and you can see like the subtle things where a guy like doesn't react, he doesn't do like a big thing, but he'll pause for a second, or his jaw will clench, or like the corner of his eye will squint. it's just a whole different ball game. So I'm always trying not to be like hypercritical of judges when they give a decision one way or another, because it is a completely different world when you are sitting cage side. And maybe that's not even an answer to like the judging is, or have a clearer thing. It's maybe add some things to the broadcast that give the fan a deeper idea of what's going on. I don't know whether that's put a mic on the something that picks up the sound of those shots landing on the referee, or something like that, where you can really pick up that subtle stuff, or really hear that in-person kind of crash or crunch or reaction, which you just cannot see on the TV at the moment.
Yeah, it's I think people are up in arms about the decision. They're not up in arms about the decision. They're just up in arms that it was a split decision. But you gave a great analysis of why you felt like you weren't offended by the split decision. But a lot of people are offended by split decisions, and they just think judging is a major problem. And I don't know. There's things that you can change with the judging, but like you said, the environment most likely changes what the judges see, and hearing things also can sway a judge, for a certain round, or for certain attacks, or what I mean, like leg kicks, like maybe a leg kick, you hit the calf, it doesn't sound that loud, but you hit the thigh, but there's more damage to the calf. Should judges think about that?
It's just incredibly hard to quantify that kind of damage. Like when you're
Mhm.
sitting cage side, unless like their leg starts to get red, or one guy's like bleeding and the other guy's not bleeding, it's very hard to quantify. I know like one idea that people have had is that only ex fighters should be judging fights. Like that should be the only person. But then that brings in, I feel like that brings in that's like a whole new kettle of fish where um, no one can go through a decade long or 2 decade long martial arts career and not have any kind of conflict of resolution like resonate with them. There's going to be some kind of conflict. You would have trained with one gym. You would have been affiliated, like you're a Gracie affiliate, and then like an affiliate guy who rolls with your old coaches is getting out there in the ring. Like obviously, you're going to have some kind of bias towards that fighter. So, like, it's saying that ex-fighters would be better judges. Yes, I do believe that. But would there be a lot of conflict of interest? That's undeniable.
Yeah, that is undeniable. Now, a lot of people are thinking like, where does Sean Strickland go from here? I mean, he's on a pretty decent streak. He's beaten. He just beat the number 6 guy. He's sitting at number 7. Ahead of him is like Paulo Costa. You got Brunson, Cannonier, Vittori. Whittaker's gonna fight next weekend against your teammate. I believe Brunson is matched up against Cannonier. What do you think? Do you feel like the names that stand out to me is either Paulo Costa or Marvin Vittori? What matchup do you feel like would be best for Strickland next?
Yeah, either the like he didn't. I didn't watch the post fight, but he's in the ring. He didn't stake like a strong claim. He wasn't just like I am next for the title. Like I'm throwing my name in the hat. Like you can't deny me. I'm fighting for the title next. So I really feel like you're gonna have to see how those fights play out with Israel and Rob, and then the Cannonier Brunson fight before you're gonna kind of be able to hitch kind of Strickland's wagon to any kind of car. He's going to have to see how those fights play out. If Brunson Cannonier is just the absolute worst fight anyone has ever seen in their life, like you don't know. I'm just, it's obvious. I don't feel like it's going to be, but if it's just obviously or something crazy, then maybe Sean Strickland could be next. So he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to pull out, pick a name just yet because he's still. I feel like a dark horse in the division, but he's definitely still in with a chance at getting an opportunity for a title shot.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. He needs to just sit back. Like I think that's the smart move for him, not to target anybody, because look what just happened with the Korean Zombie. I mean, he was sitting at what, number 6 himself,
Mm,
and
mm.
then the stars just aligned for him. Man, injuries happen. Certain fighters ahead of him lost, and then now he's fighting for the title. Sean Strickland could be in the same situation, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. That's why it would be very silly for him to call for a name of anyone besides the guy that wins gold next weekend,
Mhm.
without a doubt. Yeah, it was his style and approaches like doing so well at the moment because he's like so heavy sparring. Like he spends so much time sparring. The only problem with that, if I could spar every day, I would. If all I had to do was like sparring is my absolute favorite thing to do. Like when I have a fight, when I don't have a fight, it's my favorite. It's my favorite thing in the world to do is get out there and spar. Like if all I had to do was spar to train for fights, like this would be the easiest job in the world. It's just there's a big downside to it. If you're sparring that much or only sparring, you're only ever working on things that you're good at, or if you're sparring hard. which I have seen Sean Strickland spar in Las Vegas, and he spars hard. And that just means you can't work on, you're like unable to work on anything new, which makes it very hard for you to improve your game. Like, even though he's had incredible performances, and it's like, what, 5 or 6 fights in a row, his recent streak, he's looked very similar. His style looks incredibly similar in all of those fights, just because it's so, it's difficult to, oh, man, you know, I'm going to switch stance, or I'm going to work this attack, or I'm going to work like something new I've never worked before, when the guy opposing you is trying to take your head off. Like, the guy's trying to take your head off. Well, damn, I'm going to keep my defense tight. I'm going to work behind my jab and add my right hand every now and then, which he does. Like, he does a phenomenal job of that. But, you know, then you kind of, your growth as a fighter kind of stagnates. Like, you're never adding new tools into your game. To do that, you have to drill, and then you have to take that drilling and move that onto pad work. And then once you've advanced it in the pad work, well, then you can do it with a bit lighter sparring, or if you're doing some like technical sparring, you can try something new. Because of it, if you make a mistake, or if you miss your mark, or if you overreach, you don't have to worry about the other guy kicking you in the face and knocking you unconscious, and you're having to take a couple of months off training. But yeah, so I just feel like his style under the current system is doing a phenomenal job. I would just say that's the concern with it, and that's the concern for like young fighters emulating that, is that it's just very difficult to show any kind of development or any kind of growth. Yeah, if you're getting people who are trying to kill you in the gym every single day.
Dave, man, shout out to Dave. He's the one who does the art for us. He did the art, remember, before, and Dave is really good. He has a great question. He says, how much sway or say do coaches have in your sparring and in what you're working on?
Like massive. They have a huge influence. Like our sparring at City Kickboxing is like very controlled. The mat is like, we don't even like restrict the weight. Like Kai will spar with Junior Fa, who's like a heavyweight, just for Joseph Parker, like a heavyweight professional boxer. You know, Kai will spar with him, and it's supposed to be kept like light enough that those two are able to spar one another. Yeah, I would say our sparring is very controlled and technical, twice a week. Headgear is like a must. 16-ounce gloves are a must, you know. So it's yeah, it's a very different world from what I seen in Las Vegas. It's the small gloves. There's no big glove sparring, small gloves only, no headgear. Like, it's just yeah, you can do some pretty serious damage with those smaller gloves, especially if guys are not close teammates or really trying to look out for one another. So you have to be careful. But yeah, if you know, my trainers watch all of my sparring, they record all of my sparring, they, you know, talk about it amongst each other. So yeah, if I'm just out there being an idiot, like, they'll give me a real knock on the head and just be like what were you trying to accomplish for that? Every one of our sparring sessions has an objective, for sure.
You just mentioned that your coaches record your sparring and look at it and dissect it and then give you feedback. You know, just recently we just saw like former teammates fight each other, and then Ngannou and Cyril Gane, and old footage leaked out, or not leaked out, but it was given to like ESPN or one of the big major networks, and they released it. What do you think about that, man? Is that something that should always stay in the gym, or do you not have a problem with like sparring footage from the past being leaked out?
Yes and no. Like, people are so intrigued by it. Like, people would have just, that would have just been like the endless questions of the fight. I feel like that was a huge tool in promoting that fight. I feel like a majority of people that clicked on that pay-per-view saw the sparring footage. Like, I feel like that was the real storyline of that fight. was that they used to be teammates, and then they had everyone leading into the fight just asking, well, what happened when they trained? Well, what happened when they trained? Well, better than me sitting there and explaining it. How about I show you? So I feel like it was more in that particular instance used to promote the fight. Whereas, Gain is not a big shit talker. He's not going to get out there and mouth off or anything like that. So I feel like it was a very, in that instance, was a very useful tool that was used to promote the fight. I don't care too much. I know there's years and years of when I used to, before I was at City Kickboxing like that, I feel like that's a whole different kettle of fish. Like that kind of footage would never get released. But my sparring has been videoed for years, like overseas. Like people pull out cameras and video you and spar you. Like I feel like I'm a versatile enough fighter that I can change things. Or if someone watches sparring of me from 5 years ago, I'm adamant that my ability would have improved in that amount of time, or I can show like a new feather in my cap and a new added part of my game for sure. But yeah, it just comes down to who you train with and who you trust.
All right, going back to the main event, Sean Strickland versus Jack Hermansson. Some breaking news: we got early odds for his next fight. If he does fight Vittori's favored -125. Strickland is +110. If you go to the link in the description, you guys could go to CloudBet, throw some money on that if you want to. So it's an affiliate link, so just click on it and you guys can do that if you please. So going back to Jack Hermansson, and Sean Strickland, like you said earlier, he can sit back and kind of pick and choose like what he wants to do next. Where does Jack go? Jack has kind of, he's beaten some good guys. He's lost to some good guys. He's in kind of a limbo situation. He's still a top 10 fighter. What do you think for him next?
Same boat. That Strickland's in right now, like that was a close fight on paper. That's a split decision. Jack didn't get awfully beat up. He was pressing the fight. He was working hard. He definitely like his numbers gonna drop like one spot. Like they're gonna switch around one spot. So I feel like he's in the exact same spot as Strickland. Like he can just sit back, and then potentially take a loser off of that fight. Potentially take a loser off of the main event of next weekend, or the loser of Brunson Cannonier is a definite opportunity for him, and get that fight out of the way, and he's straight back into the mix. So I feel like no real stock was lost from Jack Hermansson there. He was not. He just wasn't able to implement his game, and then that was just Strickland controlled the fight and took the fight where he was very comfortable.
Moving on to the co-main event, Nick Maximov, Nick Diaz disciple versus Punahele Soriano. It was a split decision win, man. What did you think about that fight? I thought that Puna did the most damage. When I look at that fight, I think Puna did the most damage, and Nick, he did a good job controlling the fight, but didn't do much damage. And what the judges saw is that they picked control over damage. What did you see in the fight?
Yeah, too much control time. That second and third round was just like insurmountable. Don't get me wrong, like Puna's he's got a massive future in the sport. Like great guy. I saw him around the Performance Institute nonstop while we were in Las Vegas. Like he's a very, very friendly face, and I don't feel like this damaged his stock whatsoever. Like coming into his first co-main event. Give him another banger and he'll just be right back in the mix. Like UFC love people that come out there, plant their feet and try to take your head off. Like that is incredibly rewarded within the higher brass of the UFC, because that's really the kind of fighter that puts bums on seats. So I really don't feel like his stock is going to fall at all in that fight. But yeah, it just comes down to control time. Although a lot of damage was done, that damage was done in the first round with that knee and then a few heavy punches that were landed. But yeah, it was just too few and far between coming into that second and third round, which were clearly dominated. But still, I don't feel like Puna's lost any stock with anyone.
Yeah, Maximov, man, he did a good job after he got hurt, after he got cut, to just focus on his strengths, right? And pull out the victory. I felt like he proved a lot in that fight where he was hurt. And most guys, or not most guys, but some guys, when they get hurt, they just start to kind of throw everything out the kitchen sink and start to brawl with the other guy, right? And then that ends up getting them in trouble. Nick, he did a good job of just kind of focusing on his wrestling, focusing on his strengths, and got the victory, man. I didn't agree with the decision, but I see where the judges, got the decision for Nick. But what do you think about Nick? You know what I mean? Like he's 2 fights deep, he's 2-0. You know what I mean? He seems like he's one of the Nate Diaz disciples that are actually pretty good, you know what I mean, compared to the other guys that have fought in the UFC.
Yeah, no, he does. Like undefeated. That's like the kind of the crux of it, and having some pretty incredibly famous friends, as you might get a bit too much too soon. But no, he looks. That was good. That was good matchmaking in that fight. It wasn't too big of a step up in competition for a co-main event. I feel like that was an incredibly entertaining fight. So yeah, you get the win, you go on to bigger and better things. There's no doubting that within the UFC.
Yeah, and Darby Crash, man, he or she, I don't know for sure who. A Darby, is Darby a woman's name, you think, or a man's name?
I think that's a man's name.
Okay.
Darby.
Okay, Darby. What's the deal with this being the last fight on Strickland's contract? I don't know if it's the last fight on Strickland's contract. Maybe it is. But you've noticed this, right, Dan? That a lot of fighters are fighting out their contracts nowadays. It's not something new. It's something that's been happening over the last couple of years. What are your thoughts on that?
Risk and reward, for sure. Fighting out your contract is definitely a risk versus reward. If he has fought out his contract and it was, let's say, a 5 or 6 fight contract, and he's now 5 or 6-0, that puts him in a phenomenal position for negotiation to go out there and test the free market, see if there's an offer which the UFC would be willing to match. Like that's the real crux of the situation. But on that same boat, you go to fight out your contract, you get your head taken off in 10 seconds while your dollar value has significantly decreased. So it's risk and reward in the sport. So it's cool to see. It's like an added layer of excitement to the sport, which a majority of it, like the hardcores know. Like the hardcores know how many fights a guy has left on his contract and what kind of mental position that guy was in. Like that definitely added some tension. Like that whole back and forth with the UFC for Francis Ngannou definitely added a lot of anticipation into that fight. It's not the same when you're like a no-name fighter and no one really knows who you are, and you're lower down in the rankings, and you have to go out there and push the fight and take some damage and put on these like wild brawls. Like, what was the earlier one?
Stevenson and Erosa?
Stevenson and Erosa. Like, you got to go out there and just try to kill each other, and which they did, like an incredible amount of damage. But as the fights progress and you progress your career and you build the name and you're in a main event and you're fighting for a world title, like it doesn't have to be like these wild, crazy fights, which the Gane and Ngannou fight like wasn't, because the fans are already on the edge of their seat and they've got so much anticipation for the fight because they're like, oh, Francis Ngannou's gonna lose millions of dollars and get cut by the UFC. So that in itself is enough excitement to get the fans involved and sitting on the edge of their seats. They don't have to go out there and throw wild, crazy, and get beaten up and bashed. Like, so it's it's kind of that's like another crux. Like as you move your way up the ranks and you're fighting in main events and co-main events, it comes down to more of just sharing your story. Like the fans are just very intrigued in your story and what's happened in your camp and what's going on outside of the ring and what's happening with your contract, because it all adds like intrigue into the fight.
For sure. For the people, watching right now live, make sure, you keep on putting those comments in there, questions for Dan. And also go follow us on Twitter. If you look at the ticker down there, it shows you all the Twitter handles and Instagrams. And of course, go follow Dan if you haven't followed Dan yet. And subscribe to this. I think if you want to put a question or a comment in the chat, you have to be subscribed to the YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe so you could get in there.
You gotta subscribe. You gotta subscribe.
For sure. Now, man, Shavkat Rakhmonov, man, this guy, he is 15-0, 15 finishes. He is emotionless. Wow. He is like, I think he's the biggest prospect at welterweight right now. You know what I mean? Like, who has 15 wins, undefeated with 15 finishes? Nobody does. I don't even think Khabib did that, right? It's just, we don't see that very often. What did you think of his performance? Because a lot of people thought Harris was going to be the guy to beat him.
Yeah, wild. Like, if the guy would have gone away and someone would have taught him a single line of English to yell into the microphone and then walk off, boom, job done. He didn't even get, you see him reach out for the microphone and Bisping hit it with the fade. I was like, oh no, keep it short. Someone should have told him, keep it short and sweet, my guy. Get 1 or 2 lines, like just bite the Hamzat thing and all that, which where they just say, or what do they say? Or send me a location, like something like that. I smash him. Like, get some short, sweet, chuck it into the microphone. It's not super difficult, and that guy will be fighting for a title without a doubt. Because these long-winded answers in Kazakh and translated. You've already lost that click. You just need the soundbite is so important to. I'm not talking about the people watching the show. I'm talking about the people that don't know about any of this. The people that just, which is a majority of the people that watch UFC pay-per-views. It's not people that follow the sport. It's not people that watch the breakdowns and looking for analysis or looking for calculated answers. Like, these are the people that go like, oh, bang, see someone fall over. Guy says on the microphone, oh, kill him. Boom, they're clicking. They're going to give you their money. They're going to buy the pay-per-view. They're going to watch the fight. Like, that is what you need to do. Now that this guy's getting all these knockouts in the UFC still needs the soundbite to sell the fight. Like, Strickland was smart enough last 20 seconds to chuck in the soundbite. That's all that matters. Like, a very controlled, dominant performance, controlling the fight with his jab. They can hardly chuck. And Strickland knows this. This is why he did it in the last 20 seconds. Because Strickland knows that you can't just throw him throwing 500 jabs on a UFC highlight to promote his next fight. They're going to take that video of the last 10 seconds of him pointing at the ground and going, let's throw down, motherfucker. Like, let's go. Like, they're going to throw that and they're going to use that soundbite to promote his next fight. Hands down, without a doubt, he's smart enough to throw that in there. All they need is a 10-second clip and a 5-second soundbite, and you can sell a pay-per-view, and you can be a main event, and you can get these big opportunities. It's being aware enough within the sport to be able to execute those kind of things in a high pressure situation.
No doubt, man. Dan dropping fucking knowledge, right? Because if you think about it, Max Holloway, right, before he even won the title, you remember that fight with Ricardo Lamas, where
it was a very controlled performance. Like, that was a dominant performance by Max Holloway versus Ricardo Lamas. He dominated the fight, but he was very strategic throughout that fight. Like, he didn't take any unnecessary risks until the last 10 seconds, where he just pointed at the ground and he was like, let's throw down. Having full well that Ricardo Lamas had tried to wrestle him for 15 minutes, had completely, like, Max Holloway was able to stuff, like, I can't remember if he stuffed all the takedowns, but a majority of the takedowns, It was a very defensive wrestler, like offensively trying to wrestle someone, and you for long periods of time, and you can't get them down, is the most tiring thing in the world. He had nothing left in that last 10 seconds where Max Holloway pointed to the ground and said, "Let's throw down." Lamas is probably standing there like, man, I wish I would have saved the energy for a punch, but I didn't expect this kind of opportunity to come up like this. Like very, very smart, very calculated, where he's doing, he didn't do that at the start of the fight. It's not like he touched gloves, pointed at the ground, and when Ricardo Lamas has got a fresh overhand ready to go, and it's like a 50-50 chance he's going to knock him out. Last 10 seconds after a wrestle-heavy fight, and you've been broken down and you're exhausted, to have the energy left for a one-shot knockout punch, very unlikely. Very unlikely. Same thing as when Strickland starts going on his rants and swearing at his opponent and pointing at them and beating them up. It's once he's got his distance. It's once he's controlling the fight. It's once he knows that he's taken away all his opponent's dangerous weapons. It's once he's controlled the fight, he's shut them down, he's now starting to break them down and beat them up. That's when he starts mouthing off and getting those sound bites and doing that sort of thing, because he's taken it from his opponent. He doesn't do it at the start of the fight. That would be silly. It just shows you that Jack Hermansson was still sharp and still hitting hard that late in the fight, that Strickland was unable to get that going as early as he would have liked to.
Yeah, that you make a great point, because we didn't hear Sean say really much until way late in the fight, right? The last 10 seconds or 15 seconds, he really started mouthing off, but he already knew he won the fight, and most likely if he did get clipped, it wouldn't be as powerful as it was in the earlier moments of the fight. That's right. And Max, man, because of that moment, Max had a highlight reel. He basically become a legend at that moment, and then went on to win the featherweight title. You know what I mean? And then just added on to his legacy.
Like most people just see that clip. Most people haven't gone back and watched that entire fight. They just see that clip and they're just like, man, this guy's wild. This guy points down at the ground and he says, let's throw down, let's swing, like, let's go at it. Like, no, there's a time and place for it. There's a time and place for everything. You don't do that after you touch gloves with a guy. You do that once you've poked all the air out of his tires. He's exhausted. He's running on flats. And then you give him an opportunity to come into the fight. It's smart. It's calculated.
With Shavkat, man, he's clearly extremely talented, but yes, you do need that X factor. You do need that little sound bite, like you said. You know what I mean? He could finish 100 fights, but if you don't, get on the mic and say, like a Khabib, before Khabib really spoke that much English, he's just like, send a location. You know what I mean? That doesn't even really make any sense, but you know what he's talking about. It doesn't have to be perfect, right?
Yeah, like something simple, short, and sweet. There are definitely already it's definitely already out there. Like the blueprint for him is out there. Yeah, he's got highlights now. He just needs the soundbite, and he'll be able to move his way up into pay-per-view cards and be in a position where he can get better contracts and better opponents and shots at like the upper echelon of the division.
And going back to Sean Strickland and his post-fight interview, you know what I mean? Like, he had one of the funniest lines, man. That was another soundbite from that fight. He said, without the fans, I'd be a piece of shit, but now I'm a piece of shit with money. That's gold, right? Like, who says that, right? Like, what do you think of his persona, man? Like, how he's come out of his shell in the last couple of years, in the last couple of fights, and just kind of like putting it all out there for everybody and saying, like, this is me. You know what I mean? Because I don't think it's a character. It's not a Colby Covington type of situation right now.
No, that's definitely him. And I feel like even if fans don't like him personally, they appreciate it when someone is being genuine. I feel like that's one of the things that like pisses the fans off, when they find out you're being very ingenuine with your persona. Like, that pisses people off more than anything. So I feel like him being himself, that's cool. Like that's very cool. Whether you love him or hate him, like he's absolutely being himself, and that I feel like even if you don't like him, you have to respect because he's going out there and he's not putting on a persona like yeah, that's a very very strange thing to me. The persona, because then that shows to me like if someone's creating a persona, and I understand it to sell fights. Like don't get me wrong, it's the way that people are. If something nothing gets people to click, nothing gets people's attention like agitating them. Something that came up in when all that Facebook data was getting dropped. Like everything in your news feed, the most things that you click on is stuff that aggravates you or stuff that angers you. Nothing draws you in like something that angers you. So if you see Colby Covington wearing the Trump hat and that pisses you off, like you're gonna be like, man, I'm gonna click, I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna see what he said. Like that intrigues people more than anything else. But I feel like on a personal level, to be like that insecure about who you genuinely are shows like a huge weakness. To just be like, if I be myself, everyone's gonna hate me. That is terrible. Like there'll be there's some people that love Sean Strickland. Not everyone hates Sean Strickland, and I'm sure of it. But yeah, it's cool to see a guy go out there, just be comfortable in his own skin, say the things that he wants to say, and to truly just be genuine and not care, not absolutely not care what anyone has to say about him. It's very cool to see.
Definitely cool. What have your interactions been like with Sean Strickland? You were out in Vegas for a while.
Yeah, like saw him around Vegas. Yeah, nothing. Just bumped into him at the PI, shake hands. How you going, bud? That's all there is to it. I feel like with every fighter, there's like a level of mutual respect. Like we're all like going through the same thing. No real yeah, like he's hardly gonna try and take my head. Like we're not in the same weight class. Like we're not about to fight or anything like that. So there's no tension there or anything like that. So there's no real need for him to be tense or something like that. So no, like no, I got no ill words to say about that guy.
The UFC PI is an interesting place, man, because it's a place where all the fighters go, and certain fighters don't like certain fighters. Certain fighters are from certain camps. They don't like this guy. Like I don't see Colby ever going to the UFC PI and having like a a, a good time. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people that he has offended over the years. Is it a weird place for you, or do you feel anything? Have you ever seen any tension in the PI between people? Is it, or is it like a place where everybody can just be like, all right, we're all fighters. Let's just, it's a neutral ground right here.
I don't know. That's like a mixed question because I have seen like tension and people have some like kind of awkward, like looking at each other out of the corner of their eyes. Me personally, I couldn't care less about it. Like that, I'll walk around that place like smiling and stealing drinks and doing all of that. Like I got no like care in the world. I like it's different to me. That's not like real conflict. If I say something on Twitter and you're offended, and like if you come up to me and you say, Dan, you said this, let's go have a fight in the car park. Like, yeah, that's fine with me. We can go outside and have a fight in the car park. That's absolutely no, like it's never happened, but there's no problem. Like to be in the position that we're in, and to make it all into that way, to make it like all that way, you really can't be truly that mentality, like truly like that level of a gangster, or truly that level of a badass that you're just gonna go up and punch him. Like that's just stupid. That's just silly stuff. Like everyone at the PI like understands that this is business and that you represent a promotion, you represent the sport, and that if you do something stupid like that, you do one stupid thing, you could completely sacrifice. You just walk up and blind shot someone at the PI. That's your career done and dusted. I feel like international fighters, especially, and a lot of young fighters need to understand that. There's a lot of American-based fighters with criminal history, or like Derek Lewis has been to prison and things like that. As an international fighter, you can't look at that and be like, oh, he's been to prison, I can be a bit of a badass and then get in the UFC. Like, nah, you ain't getting into the US with any kind of criminal conviction. Like, if you're a young MMA fighter who doesn't have a green card and a US passport, you have to be very selective and very careful about the people that you associate with and the things that you do. If you're just, man, if you get a drugs charge or an assault charge or anything like that in New Zealand, then try to get yourself into Canada, try to get yourself into the US, it ain't happening. It ain't happening. Your P1 visa is not getting approved, my friend. So I just feel like it's not like that. Like, we see a lot of stuff on Twitter and we see a lot of stuff like that, but truly I feel like it's not real tension to me. It's not real. We're just fighters, and also businessmen. There's no just fighters anymore. I feel like that time has more than passed.
Yeah, the street fighter mentality it's done, man.
Well, like
you
Tank Abbott. Like, imagine a UFC. Imagine imagine there's a performance institute at like UFC 40. That would have been an absolute mess. Like, Tank Abbott, like, rolling up 20 beers deep to the PI, just taking it over, sitting in the spar and just punching everyone out.
Do they have beers at the PI?
I wish. Nah, there's no beers.
They don't. All right, I just wondering, you know, maybe they got some healthy beers or something.
Oh, that ain't like the well, they got it on the there's an open bar at the Ultimate Fighter, right?
Okay.
Ultimate Fighter TV show has like absolutely, like, I don't think they give those kids a deck of cards, but they have a fully stocked liquor cabinet. There's like a fully stocked alcohol cabinet. They're just asking for trouble. I was surprised like more stuff doesn't happen. Like, it used to happen in like the Chris Lieben days and that, but I feel like the last couple of seasons of the Ultimate Fighter, the liquor cabinet has stayed firmly locked.
Yeah, well, I think those fighters watched the early Ultimate Fighters and saw what happens. You know?
Like, I don't want to be that guy. They're like, oh, I don't want to be known as that. Let me bang,
you don't want to be
bro.
known as
Let
exactly.
Bang,
yeah, you don't want to be the let me bang bro guy. You know what I mean? He has it like he's a completely insane individual. He has a tattoo.
He's fighting Mike Perry, BKFC.
That's right.
That's a good fight. Yeah. Man, I heard some guys are getting some crazy money fighting in their bare knuckle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we just saw Chad Mendes. He's talking about he's getting paid in total with sponsors more money than Francis Ngannou's purse. So, you know, good for them, man. If you're able to go over there and make money, go make money while you can, because you don't know when this will last, how long it will last, right? We've seen promotions come and go, drop big cash, and then next you know, we seen Affliction. We saw Affliction, right? Affliction came and went real quick, and they were supposed to be the competitor of the UFC, and they didn't last at all.
Tim Silva, that was the last one, eh? Tim Silva, Fedor.
Exactly, right? Andre Arlovsky fought on that too, and Josh Barnett. Yeah. They're throwing some big cash to the big names. It was a good show, but those guys it's
a good show, but obviously it's a whole different kettle of fish trying to run a business. Just being in like Las Vegas and seeing the PI and like knowing all the people that work there, just because you know them by like all the people that work there in the PR department and travel and things like that. Like, you get to know these people, so you get to understand like how big of a machine the UFC is. Like, it's an incredibly large operation to get all of that stuff moving into the level where it's such a well-oiled machine. I've never seen any other promotion like anywhere near that much of a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of people, they don't know, man. They don't know what it takes. And when you start to go to like the lower level of promotions and see what's going on over there, and like one guy has like 15 jobs, and it's just chaos, man. It's chaos. So anyways, let's move down on the card, man. Any fights that like kind of stood out to you, Dan, on this card? You know, of course the Rosa Peterson card was fight was pretty crazy. These guys, I interviewed both of them ahead of the fight, and both of them were like, "We're gonna fight, and that's it." Or you're gonna
Did they get fight of the night? They
I
must
have
have.
no idea. They've had to, but the thing is, Peterson, he missed weight by 4 pounds, so he can't get any bonus no matter what.
I've seen it, yeah,
right?
but I've seen him in real life. Like he's not like a big, like Rosa's like a pretty big 45er.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
very
he's
tall.
not. He's not. And that's the second time in a row that he doesn't make
Yeah,
that weight.
yeah. That's the second time.
Something.
What do
Yeah.
you do with a
like
guy like that? Like if he's missed weight second time in a row, he won the last fight, but he beat Chase Hooper, which is not really, it's a win, right? And he comes in and loses a split decision in a war. Do you give him a chance? You know what I mean? Like, do you make him go up a weight class? What kind of decisions that
I
does
don't
this
think
guy
he.
have to
Yeah,
make?
I don't think he could. I don't think
Yeah,
he definitely doesn't have the frame to be a 55er. I don't know. Like I don't know what he's doing outside of fight week, but it needs to get sorted out. Like there's really, it's hard because there are some like Charles and Clint at the UFC. Like those guys, that is their job. Their job 24/7. You can. I have their numbers on my phone. I could message Clint. I could message Charles, and they will message me back and answer my questions or send me meals or tell me what I should eat or what I should drink. Fight week, it's all taken care of. Like they take care of absolutely. Charles will come to your room and help you in the bath and like make sure everything is going the way it should be going. So it's really, yeah, that's difficult for me to understand like what exactly is going on there. But to like, do I feel like he needs to be punished further? Man, having lost out on a $50,000 bonus would kill me. Like that would grind. Like that is punishment enough. I feel like he has been adequately punished for that. So I'm not heaping like anything on the poor kid. Like I feel like yeah, get in touch with Clint, get in touch with Charles, sort it out, and move on to a bright future.
Dave is saying that they got fight of the night, and then they gave Erosa the other 50K, so he got 100K. Ain't that a
Yeah,
that
that's
is
what happened.
that's
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. That's what happens. You can't win a bonus if you miss weight. So he's just pissed away $50,000.
Erosa could go buy a house now. 100K, damn, for 15 minutes of work. What
Man, you
a
can go buy a house in America. Maybe you can't buy. Mate, you couldn't buy a car park here in Auckland. Google Auckland. People always say that. Oh, you must be rich. Google Auckland house price. We got a median house price here in Auckland for $1,000,000. You can't. The average price of a house is over $1,000,000 here in New Zealand.
in where I live in Seoul, the average price of an apartment is $1 million or more.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
crazy
Same
for an
as in
apartment.
like New York. Like when I was in New York, like no one even owns their apartments over there. It's just too expensive.
Yeah,
It's
it's crazy.
ridiculous.
I live right outside the city, man, in a villa. A villa is like a mini apartment or whatever, and it's pretty like it's like 250,000, something like that to buy it. You know what I mean? 300,000 to
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
it. So it's pretty insane. In the first fight of the night, actually not the first fight, the only women's fight, right? Between Alexis Davis and Storenko. Up kick, you know what I mean? Storenko was on her back trying to hit submissions, and then she hit Davis with the up kick to the face. I think I'm a type of person that I want up kicks to be legal in MMA, in the UFC, in the unified rules. What is your take on up kicks? Do you think that they should be legal, or do you like it the way it is?
That was the only fight which I didn't think. I was training.
Mhm.
I was training for my fight. So I watched the start of the show, took off to the gym, got some training in, tried to catch the rest of the fights after. That's the only fight I didn't see. So one of them was grounded and got up kicked, or what
Yeah,
happened?
she was on. What is it? Storenko was on her back, and she up kicked Davis in the face, and then the ref stopped it. It's not, he didn't stop the fight, but he stopped the action and said, like, you can't do that. I think upkicks should be legal. What do you think?
I have absolutely no problem with upkicks being legal. Soccer kick, I'm like toss and turn. I to and fro. Like personally, I would love it if soccer kicks were legal. Like I've won a fight with soccer kicks. The weirdest one was how ONE FC changed it. This is like the weirdest one. They had soccer kicks legal, then the rule changed where you had to get your soccer kick approved by the referee before you could throw it. And now this rule absolutely blew my mind, because if you have the time to have hurt someone, that you have enough time to turn to the referee and ask the referee, can I kick this guy in the face? Like the fight should probably be solved. And then once they brought that rule in, all that was happening is that guys were getting the soccer kicks approved, blowing someone's head off, and essentially the fight was over. Like very rarely you could go back in the history of MMA when soccer kicks are legal, like very rarely does a soccer kick change the course of a fight. This is why I'm not that fussed that it's not legal. Even though I would love to kick someone in the head in like a savage myself way, I feel like that personally, that would be incredible. Like I would love it. I don't feel like it adds that much to the fight. It's not like guys are having super close fights, is back and forward scramble, and then a guy gets soccer kicked and it turns the course of the fight. That, in the history of soccer kicks, is generally not how soccer kicks play out. Generally, soccer kicks are just used to finish and hurt opponent. Like a guy's exhausted, he's injured, Shogun starts jumping over the top of him and stomping his head in, or like a guy gets dropped with a punch, he turtles up, and instead of bending down and punching the guy, you just come around and like soccer kick him. So yeah, I would love it if they were legal, but I don't feel like they would change MMA that much, or they would truly change the course of a fight, or guys are soccer kick expert. Like it's not really how the soccer kick was used. It's more just used to save the energy of bending over. You just have to stand there and kick the guy. So I understand why it's not being made legal.
Yeah, the soccer kick, like you said, one championship, that was a weird thing that they did. I like how Ryzen does it, which is they kind of, when they put the fight together in the contract, the rules are stated there. Like soccer kicks are legal, elbows are legal, take out the elbows. They kind of, every fight is unique in itself. You know what I mean? And I like that. If you can do that in Japan, do that in Japan. I know in the US, and they got the unified rules, which they try to follow, unilaterally. So it's hard to change each fight.
It just like they make it like that just so the sport is like easier to follow by the people watching the sport. I feel like that's the biggest thing. Like you're showing someone new, and imagine it's your first time watching an event, and you're watching a Ryzen event. And you're just like, oh, that guy just kicked that guy, and then so he can do that. Oh no, he can't do this, but he can. Like it was very just confusing for your casual fan. Imagine if the NFL had if you play in New York, you're allowed to have like a whole different rule set. Like it would be too confusing. It would be too confusing for a casual consumer of the sport to comprehend that different states allow like different things. So it's easy. I think it's easier for a casual fan if the sport is like unified.
Yeah, definitely, it's easier. Yeah, with the soccer kicks, another thing that I've seen in the past is where a guy is on his back and he has his legs up, and the guy that's standing, he swings the legs around and then soccer kicks them. So there's like this momentum both ways, where your head is spinning towards his leg and your leg is headed like full soccer kick to his head, which is like extremely devastating. But I think that's what you're talking about, right? That would be something that that would be like, like Mortal Kombat style, like finish him, you know what I mean, in MMA.
Oh, cool. Like I love the idea of it. I feel like it's like a nostalgic thing. Like I love Pride, I love all of that. So it's a very the soccer kick's like a pure thing, it's like a raw thing. It's a very nostalgic thing for me. But yeah, in like a legitimate, practical term, I don't feel like it changes the course of the fight.
For sure. And for the people in the chat, if we passed up your question, just put your question back in the chat, because the questions are coming down. I can't go back and scroll up. It's just too much multitasking going on. But
It's
there's a
all
good
on
question.
him. It's all on
Yeah.
him. I don't have no questions. I can't see the questions. I can't pick your questions.
All right, so we got a
I'm not
question for
taking
you.
responsibility for any of the questions.
Exactly. It's not that, it's me. So you could hate tweet me all you want. It's all good. I don't read it anyways. You feel like that might be why Japanese MMA fighters tend to do worse in US? Do you think that's the reason, that their rules are different and they're used to training under those rules, that when they go over to the US that they don't perform as well? I don't think so, in my opinion.
Nah. That's not it. That's definitely not it. Just Japanese MMA needs to be appreciated for itself. Like, I have a huge respect for like the Japanese spot. I don't know, their whole mantra around mixed martial arts and fighting and why you fight and like there's a whole different complete understanding of the sport over there. I feel like it's in Japan it's like a very respect based thing, and you prove more by just showing your heart as a fighter. I feel like that over anything else in Japanese martial arts is respected. And it doesn't, I just feel like their style of martial arts is its own unique style, and it just doesn't translate to like the UFC form very well. It's the same thing, in my opinion, as Thai boxing is Thai boxing. Muay Thai is Muay Thai. Like Muay Thai in Thailand, it's like its own different thing, and it has its own different level of understanding and respect within the culture. Like, and then you throw them in a K1 fight, and it's 3 3-minute rounds, and you just go balls to the wall as hard as you can, and whoever lands the most strikes or knocks the other guy out wins. Like, that's not generally how like Muay Thai in Thailand is fought. Like, the first round is just like it's like an agreement that's where we have like a feeling out process, like get the range down. And then if a fighter has clearly, it's a 5-round fight, and one fighter has clearly won rounds 1 to round 4, round 5 he will in traditional Muay Thai, like that guy will coast. Yeah. The guy winning the fight will coast, will pull back, and they won't inflict, if he's got the fight won, he won't inflict any more damage on his opponent because it's unnecessary. He's already won the fight. He doesn't need to kill the guy. He doesn't need to put any more damage. He's already proven that he's the better fighter, so there's no need to know. And that is like a hard thing to comprehend for your average UFC fan. Like, you explain that to them, that, oh, well, Muay Thai, like, if a guy's winning the fight, the 5th round, he doesn't try to hurt the guy. You'd be like, what? But how does he get the $50,000 bonus if he doesn't knock the guy's head? So there's like different parts of it, and I feel like Japanese MMA is the exact same thing. It's a lot more of just a respect-based culture, and just it doesn't translate well. So it's not because of the different rules or anything like that. It's just the different understanding, and their reasons for fighting mixed martial arts are a lot different than why a fighter would start fighting mixed martial arts if they were based in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been covering Japanese MMA for a while, for many years, and I went over there for a Ryzen show. The last show where they had Bellator and Ryzen together when Fedor fought Rampage. I was there for that. That was crazy. But yeah, wow. Japanese MMA, respect to it, because like, say like that today's fight between Julian Erosa and Steven Peterson, that's what Japanese MMA wants. If you go out there and fight your heart out, you'll get re-signed automatically. You know what I mean? They'll want you back. Yeah, it's not about win or lose. You know what I mean?
It's not about It's Japanese MMA is not about win or lose. Like, as you go out there and show your heart. But yeah, like, it's a crazy, because I fought in Japan. I think it was my second UFC fight. I went over and fought in Japan, and it was like the funniest fight. Me and Maximo Blanco, we were like, it was a great, like, we were punching each other's heads off, and it was like crazy. But then, like, he would get a takedown and he would pass the side control, and you just hear this from the crowd. It was like a uniform clap, and they were all clapping. And because when I was walking out for my fight, and I'm just like locked in the zone and like looking, I didn't think anyone was there because it was so quiet. And then like I look up, and no, it was at the Saitama Super Arena, and it was it was like a packed house. But they're all just sitting there like nice and quiet. We punching each other's heads off. I'm getting hit with things, cuts, everything. The crowd's not that into it. Get a takedown, pass the side control, or I did a scramble back to my feet, like a very technical move, and they're all just like, oh wow, and they all start clapping in unison, and it's just different. It's just a whole different kettle of fish. I think it's the best thing ever. I feel like Japanese MMA is the walkouts, the show, the no weight limit when they got a 70-kilo guy fighting a 200-kilo guy. Absolutely incredible. That is what the sport needs more. That's what the UFC needs more of. We need just more old school, wild shit. Take it back to the Cowboys. Back to the Cowboy days.
Definitely. Since you're in the featherweight division now, you're recharging your batteries over there. Max Holloway, right? Like they just cleared him medically to train again. Isn't that a weird situation, right? He was taken off the fight against Volk. Then they put the zombie in there, and then now he's medically cleared and it ends up being the backup for the Korean zombie versus Volk. What do you think of that whole situation that's going on right there?
Yeah, that's weird, right? That's weird. Yeah. Well, the contract must already be signed between Korean Zombie and Volk. Like that's the only logical reason why they couldn't just be like, oh no, he's come back. We'll just switch it, or like that's a very weird situation. But yeah, like that's the belt tied up for this year, I guess. Like by the time that the winner of Korean Zombie and Volk gets done, they get some time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
That fight gets rebooked. Then there's probably Volk versus Holloway for that fight, and then they take some time off. Like that's the title is now locked up for 2022, which is very good for me. That means there's a lot of guys in that top 5 after Arnold Allen who are kind of just sitting around and twiddling their thumbs and have no real excuse to not accept a fight. So yeah, everything has its pros and cons. Every situation.
Coot Magoot. I love the name Coot Magoot.
Coot Magoot.
Yeah. Can we get a Hangman versus Dustin Poirier again? What do you think? What's the percentage of that happening again, you think?
Oh, I would do it for sure. For sure. That's that was a great fight. I was having too much fun in that fight. Yeah, count me in. We'll see.
All right. Jitin. Oh, Jitin. Dan the man. He's a big fan. Tell us about the last bar brawl you were in NZ. Is there anything you could tell us like that won't get you in legal trouble or anything?
I'm trying to think now. Yeah, that was a very I don't like. So far, I'll go out if I'm in like Las Vegas. I'll go out. If I'm somewhere else, I'll go out. But if I'm in New Zealand, I don't go out. I don't go to town. You've seen Israel out with his big Paulie, his 7 foot tall, 160 kilo bodyguard. He rolls around Auckland with, and yeah, I don't really go out. I haven't really been to town in Auckland since I was a bouncer. Since I was being like a doorman bouncer in Auckland. So that's like years ago, right? That's like before I was even the UFC. I haven't been out in Auckland. So it'd be a very long time since I've been in any kind of wild nightclub brawls.
When you were a bouncer, was that when you were like walking around over 200 pounds? Were you ever walking around over? You were walking around over 200 pounds before, right?
Oh, I have, but now like bouncer. When I was bouncing, I would have been fighting at mainly just fighting at lightweight. So I I don't know, people just give you like some pretty funny looks. Like you're just like they'll walk past you like real drunk and they're like kind of looking for trouble, and then they catch you out of the corner of their eye and they're just like there's like a 70-kilo skinny white guy standing there, and they're just like he's probably not standing there for no reason. They, the last person they want to kick their ass is a skinny white guy. That's a bad story to go home and tell your mates. Like, oh, it's easy to go, oh, these 9 guys, these 9 massive guys beat me up. You don't want to go home and say, oh, the skinny white guy beat the shit out of me. That's the last thing you want to tell your mates.
Yeah, I think that's the last thing for sure. And David Sedin, he said, I thought Dan fought at heavyweight once. Is that true?
I fought a heavyweight. I was not. I fought at featherweight 2 weeks before that fight. I've talked about that story.
Yeah.
I've talked about that story. But it was like a heavyweight at my gym. Was supposed to be like the main event on our gym, was putting on a show that weekend, and then he like broke his hand like a few days out. I think it was like Wednesday before the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So my coach was like all pissed off that the main event was gone and that our guy had to pull out with a broken hand. And I said, oh, he was just pissed off about it. That I was like, well, how much does he weigh? I said, I'll take the fight. And he's like, oh, I think he was like 100, close to 130 kilos. I was like, I would have been like 80, like 83, 80. Yeah, mid 80s, low mid 80s.
All right. Dave, Dan, who do you think is a great first fight for you at featherweight? Well, he's fighting Arnold Allen.
Arnold Allen.
Yeah, that's
Arnold Allen's come on, Dave. Get up with the play, mate. I'm fighting Arnold Allen. I'm in the middle of my training camp right now for March 19th. I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to sit on that plane for 4 days, and I'm going to arrive in London. It's a pretty long flight though. I believe it's like 30 hours flight time.
Yeah, that's insane. And especially with COVID, flights have become much longer. You know what I mean? It's hard to get direct flights anywhere either. You know?
You can't, mate. They don't fill a plane with enough fuel to go from Auckland to London. There's not a plane in the world that can make that whole trip. So we're gonna stop. I think you can go through. I think we'll go through Singapore. I think it's Singapore. In Singapore, I can go to London.
Todd, what's up, Todd? Next Kiwi to look out for in the UFC.
Well, there are a couple. There's Blood Diamond making his UFC debut. Well, that's next weekend. That's the next one. Blood Diamond. Multiple New Zealand and Australasian kickboxing and Muay Thai champion. Undefeated in MMA, so he's got a big future. I would say unsigned guys, definitely Brogan Anderson has his hand up for next. He's a middleweight. I believe it's a 6-fight win streak that he's currently riding. Majority of the win streak is finished, and he's ranked in the top couple in Australasia, like pound for pound. So unsigned. So I feel like Brogan Anderson is definitely head and shoulders up there. Another guy, Matt Vale from Hamilton. I believe he's 11-2. The Viper, 11-2 as a professional. That's another guy that will do some very big things once he gets himself to the UFC. So there's a couple of names for you to go away and research.
Yeah, man. Brogan Anderson, Matt Vale. I've been watching them for a few years, just doing damage on the regional scene over there. Yeah, they eventually going to get their shot. Let's go back to Blood Diamond, man. Next weekend, 3 of your teammates are going to be fighting at UFC 271. Let's start with Blood Diamond. He's going to make his UFC debut. A lot of people just look at his record and see 3-0, but to be honest, he's been in that kickboxing world for a long time. A champion in many different promotions. What can you tell us about his MMA game? You've been in training camp with him, so you know really well who he is.
Yeah, wild. Like, people can look at the mixed martial arts record and make whatever they want to make from that it's only 3 fights, but he's had, I think it's like 80 or 90 fights. Like that is a ridiculous amount of fights. So pretty much Blood Diamond and like Israel's path is like virtually identical. Like they fought New Zealand 50 fights, went over to China, and then were competing on the Chinese circuit, which is like fighting every week, every second week, moving town, fighting another, fighting again, fighting constantly, just getting that ring time up. Like if you compare like ring time, and you can say the rules, kickboxing, Muay Thai, this, that, MMA, ring time is ring time. Like depth, like being able to understand that challenge, being able to stay patient, being able to stay understand an opponent and read an opponent is a fight without a doubt, regardless of the skill set. So all of those lessons can be taken from his kickboxing experience and transferred directly into his MMA experience. So he's a very experienced fighter, regardless of the 3-0 professional MMA record. But yeah, wild. Go and watch his highlight reel. Go on YouTube, type in Blood Diamond highlights, and I'm sure something will come up, and you see this guy spinning, jumping, rolling, flying across everywhere. If I couldn't tell you what to expect from this guy. It's that wild. I have absolutely no idea what he's going to do. I have absolutely no idea what he's going to do when I spar him every week. He jumps, he flies, he spins, he rolls. He does all sorts of wild shit. And I'm so excited to see him do it in the UFC.
Yeah, and he has a perfect dance partner too. You know what I mean? His first dance partner was a decent matchup, but this guy's going to stand and throw heavy against Blood Diamond. And like you said, Blood Diamond is unpredictable. He's wild, and fight fans are going to love his style. You know what I mean? It's all gas, no brakes with Blood Diamond, right?
He's like he's definitely water. He's definitely water. Like he moves around you, and he no timing, no reads, impossible to read. It's so cool to see a fighter like that at a level like that, you know. I'm so excited to see him fight. Like you have absolutely no idea, like the potential things that this man might do in this fight. Rolling Thunder. We haven't seen many Rolling Thunders and spinning kicks and jumping, flying scissor knees. Like he's wild. Trust me.
Moving on, you got Carlos Ulberg. He's gonna enter the UFC, enter the octagon once again. How has he been looking? You know, I mean, I think he suffered his first loss in his last fight in the octagon, so he's coming back. What are you seeing from him?
Oh, gun, like absolute gun. Like there's very few physical specimens like that. There's very few athletes like that which have not been taken by rugby or football or basketball or something like that, and have chosen fighting. Like he is an incredible physical specimen. I feel like that last fight was it purely just came down to experience. It was a very early on in his mixed martial arts career. He did have a professional boxing career and kickboxing career. He was a multiple King of the Ring champion, but definitely not the same experience level as like Israel Adesanya or Brad Riddell or Blood Diamond or something like that. So I feel like that was just like an eye opener for him, just being in the UFC cage. And he's definitely bounced back from that. Like he's come back hungrier than ever. He's come back incredibly motivated. And man, Eugene's just been grinding those boys. Like once I got back and it was just like watching that, it was so. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love like the noises tired people make. I love the sounds they make. I love the look on their face when they're exhausted and they're just like, oh, like it just gives me so much life and so much energy to see that kind of thing. And there was a lot of it between those three guys. Like you just put up like the picture of them all after their last workout, like all like pretty much crumpled messes on the ground. And I was there. They were. That's like legit. There's like none of that was staged. Like Eugene just got just push them to that point where they're just absolutely shattered and they can't pick themselves up off the ground. So it's like incredible to see them push their body to that limit. And there's no way that you test yourself like that in the gym and then you don't go out in the cage and push yourself to that exact same limit. Like that's where I'm so excited because all three of them, like that's where they are prepared to go. They are prepared to push their body to the absolute breaking limit. And that is what gets me most excited about my teammates fighting.
Man, it's I've been watching the fight camp videos that Israel's been putting out, and also, been checking out the social media posts by all the fighters. And yeah, these guys have been in an intense camp. I mean, if you don't realize the type of camp that the City Kickboxing boys go through, just go and watch Israel's recaps of his fight camp. It's pretty insane. And Dan knows best, what I mean? Like that video that and that video,
terrible.
just
like being stuck at a washing machine. It's like so we go like your last 9 weeks before you fight is 7 days a week. You do you don't have a day off for over 2 months. Like you actually, because I'm in the middle of it right now, but I absolutely love the feeling. Like you're actually stuck in a washing machine. I don't even look up to see what day it is. Like I just know there's a session in the morning and a session in the afternoon, and there's time to get to work. It's like hyperbaric time chamber. That's all you can compare it to. Like 1 week in the City Boxing training camp is like 6 months in a different gym.
Is there anybody else in the gym that enjoys the fight camp, the grueling fight camp, as much as you at City Kickboxing?
Oh, they all do. Okay. They all do. You just I don't know. Maybe they just don't admit it. They just don't admit it to themselves. Like, I will miss this. I will miss once it's all said and done, like I will miss this more than anything. Like it's just you're pushing yourself mentally and physically to like the absolute extremes every single week, like right up into that point where you're just like going to mentally and physically break. You push yourself every week to that point. Like that is something that you'll miss. Like I can't even remember where I got it from, but that's why when people say, "Oh, you lost, you lost your last fight, you got submitted, you must be depressed and dragging your feet and this and that," like to a certain extent, the longer you sit and lick your wounds and cry about your life, like it's like crying over spilt milk. The only person that is going to negatively impact is you. The longer you sit and cry about it and be upset, the only people that are winning are the people that don't want you to win. That's the only person that's going to affect. The best thing to do is just get back out there, because once this is all said and done and your career is finished, I'm gonna miss that feeling as much as I miss winning. Like it's that roller coaster ride. It's the depths of defeat where you're just like, no, like it just hurts so bad, and that thrill of the victory. Like both of them, I love the wins, and I will even miss the losses when I'm retired, because it's very hard to emulate that kind of feeling in life.
It is. And I got some news. I won't announce it now. Dan knows, but in the coming weeks, I will announce it, and it has to do with what Dan is talking about. We'll talk about it in the future. But random. Are we doing the show next week? Of course, we're doing the show next week. It's a weekly show. It's going to be after every UFC event.
This is the first
unless
episode.
Dan is fighting. Yeah, this is the first episode.
We did this episode to make sure that we understand that we're clicking all the right buttons and that you can hear us, and we didn't fuck any of it up. We didn't fuck any of it up. You've been listening to the whole show. We didn't make no mistakes.
Exactly.
I feel like this has gone smooth. This has been an incredibly smooth show.
Smooth operator, man. Smooth operator. And let's see. We got to talk about Israel, man. Of course, he's got his title fight coming up. He's going to be fighting Robert Whittaker again. A lot of people believe like since it's in neutral ground now, it's going to be a different fight. Robert Whittaker is going to come in with a different game plan. A lot of people are focusing on the wrestling aspect, and I remember Robert did an interview a couple of days ago talking about if it was that easy to take down Israel, then somebody would have already done it and beat him that way. You know what I mean? It's really fucking hard to take him down and keep him down.
It's really hard.
And you know best, man. Like a lot of people
really
feel
hard.
like if that's the only path to victory, then is Robert kind of fucked? You know what I mean? Because it's hard to see someone outstriking Israel, right?
It's incredibly hard to see someone outstriking Israel. Just like we were talking about with Bloodline, like that amount of ring time, that amount of understanding of the game, like having that much experience within our sport is like absolutely incredible. It's like once you get to the UFC and you're in the top echelon, like let's say you've only ever fought, like myself, only ever fought like professional MMA, and then you fight your first guy of a certain style. Imagine it's like the first time you're fighting like a Dustin Poirier, like a pressure fighting boxer, southpaw. You're having to do that in the main event of a UFC. Like that's the first time you've ever seen that. But you go back into like Israel's catalog, he can go back into his 100 kickboxing fights and be like, oh, I fought a heavy punching southpaw pressure fighter 8 times. Well, I can refer to my history of that and how I dealt with that and what I learned from those 8 times, take it into that main event. And so it's a whole different level of experience. And I would say that to like young fighters, because the game has completely evolved. Like I debuted professional MMA. You just can't do that these days. Like if you're a young fighter, get as much experience as you can fighting amateur MMA, fighting amateur boxing, fighting in jiu-jitsu tournaments, fighting in amateur kickboxing fights. Like have as many fights as you possibly can so that your catalog of understanding of the sport is a mile long. So that when you get into these positions where you're fighting for opportunities at $1 million contracts, that you have all of that experience and can pick and choose from that database and get the result. Like it's the proof is on the pudding. Like look at how Israel has dominated his division.
So what do you see in this fight, though? It's a rematch, right? So Robert, he's a very cerebral guy. He's very talented, very skilled. So he's going to come with something different. I believe he'll come with something different. And Israel will, do what he needs to do. So what do you see in this fight? Like, how do you see it playing out? Yeah. I don't know. Like,
what from his last fight with Israel to this fight, like what has he done different? And what has he shown in any of those other fights that he hadn't shown leading into the first fight?
He's just been more effective, I think, in his last couple of fights.
Just more effective with the same stuff that didn't
exactly. One thing that sticks out to me that he didn't use or he hasn't used in a long time is the teep to the top of the knee. He used to do that. He used to use that against like Romero, and in his title fights, he used that a lot, but he just stopped doing it for some reason. And I thought, like, if you can do it, why would you not utilize that weapon? Do you understand?
Yeah,
that?
Like from what like I'm not part of the I'm just a fighter at City Kickboxing. Like I'm not part of the coaches' discussions or anything like that. But I've heard like Eugene talk about it on another interview, and he was like, they didn't even get to the game plan. Like Israel, and he has that authority just to autonomously like change the game plan. He saw something, the counter punching, the check hook, and he saw that hole in the game and threw that on the fly. So from what Eugene's saying, like they didn't even implement the game plan in that fight. So they still have a completely unused game plan for Rob, which they hadn't used yet, which they have a great opportunity in the rematch to go back and revisit that game plan, which is all there. It would have been effective regardless. But, Izzy called it audible and it worked very well. But there's like a whole game plan that hasn't even been used yet. So yeah, we're excited to see how that preparation plays out.
Yeah, definitely. You know, like you said, he called the audible. If he didn't use the game plan, that means he has three more game plans, right? Like Eugene is a genius for a reason, and you guys fully trust in him for a reason. So, you know, I mean, like, it's gonna be a crazy fight. We'll watch that fight. We're gonna be back next week and break down all the action and get Dan's reactions to his teammates' fights and whatever else went down during the show. Oh, Tai Tuivasa is back. He has a huge opportunity versus Derek Lewis, man. That's an insane fight. And you know Tai pretty well, right? He's one of those guys, right? He's one of those guys. He's like a fighter, right? He's a fighter's fighter.
Yeah, like he's kind of like you just want to punch the other guy's head off. Like it's a combat sports is incredibly, yeah, it's like a match of two polar opposites. Like it's both incredibly detailed. To me, it's like playing chess. You got a chessboard there, and then you're playing like just flipping a coin at the side. Like that's always there, or like a game of Snap. If you play Snap with cards, so it's like an incredibly simple game running simultaneously as an incredibly complex game, and it's like you need to be aware of both because you could be about to win the chess match, which has taken 5 hours, and then the other guy snap, bang, and in one flip of a card has completely changed the course of the fight. But that's why it's why you crazy people watch this stupid sport, and it's why we are so entertained every single weekend.
All right, Dan, man, I appreciate you sitting down with me. We'll be back next week. Everybody watching, make sure you subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. And yeah, we'll be back and do this again one more time. And it went smooth, so we'll be smooth again. Thank you.